I'm going to read a verse, and when you hear it, you know it's a very familiar verse. Isaiah 64 verse 1. Oh, that you will rend the heavens and come down, that the mountains might quake at your presence. This is a verse that you have heard over the few weeks. And today I like to tell you from 3 stories from the Gospel of Mark, how the Gospel writer Mark interpret God's answer to this prayer. Isaiah prayed a prayer. In fact, Isaiah more than prayed prayers, he prophesied. And throughout the New Testament, we will see how God actually answer or fulfill the prophecies of Isaiah, and also answer the prayers, or some of the prayers that Isaiah prayed. This prayer is a wish almost. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down. Sounds very clear to us that what he wants is an intervention or a coming, a God breaking through our natural earth and be present to do his will, that his kingdom will come, that his will will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And you will see that this kind of prayer has a note of desperation about it. I'm sure in your life, even before you became a Christian and after you became a Christian, especially when you have become a Christian, there are so many situations that you face and you wish that God will come in to this earth here and do his work. I'm sure when you have seen or heard of stories where people meet a loved one who died, or they say, oh God, you come in and, resurrect my dear one. Or you see a sick person and so desperately want God's action. You almost say, oh Lord, you will rend the heavens and come down and do your mighty deeds. I surely have many situations like that. I remember one of the early ones that I had, I still do have that feeling once in a while, was a sick man who was paralyzed from the waist downwards, sitting in a wheelchair in the Toronto Camp Military Hospital, where I had just had my appendix operation. And, all my heart went out to him. I wanted him to walk up of the wheelchair. And if God could only do that for him, what a great testimony he would be, not only to the hospital, I'm sure, to a great part of the town. I remember sitting at the back of the bus. Sometimes I took the bus from the workplace to go and visit him. I bring books, I bring all sorts of things. I remember I was so wanting God to come down. As I prayed with weeping and almost just sheer desperation that God would do something for this man. Because God didn't. Now here is a story, a prayer like that only God can answer, because he's asking God himself to come down. And we look at how Mark interpreted this story, the gospel writer Mark. So we'll take 3 stories, and they have a common theme. One is almost at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, one is at the end of his ministry, and one in the middle. So I'll start with the beginning one and the end one, because these 2 stories form a bracket or a bookend to the whole message of what Mark, the gospel writer, wants to say to us. So I'll start with the first one. It's in Mark 1 and verse 9. It's the baptism of Jesus. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And when he came out of the water, immediately he saw the heavens being torn open, torn open, and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my beloved, with you I am well pleased." Mark 15, verse 37 is the second story. Though this is not chronological, you understand, because afterwards I'm going to go to Mark 9. But Mark 15, verse 37, and Jesus is on the cross now, and Jesus uttered a loud cry and breathed his last, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." As I said, the third story will be from the story of the Transfiguration of Jesus, which is in the Gospel of Mark. So, Mark used these two stories, the baptism and the crucifixion, to mark the beginning and the end of this particular theme. And there are similarities in these two passages. The first one, of course, is the word torn, found in both stories. The heavens were torn, and the curtain was torn. The word torn there is a definite word. It's just not something. For example, Matthew and Luke will say heavens open. So, but this is not heavens open. This is the heavens torn and the curtain torn. There's a violent action to that than just mere opening. So we can see that he is trying to make you connect by words, the writer of Mark. So heaven torn. This is very like the answer to Isaiah's prayer, isn't it? That he tore heaven and God came down. Then so sorry, I'm going to be back and forth between these two passages. You have to bear with me. But I'll try to say them, help you refer to them clearly. So the curtain of the temple was torn in two. On this veil, Josephus, the historian, tells us that there is a curtain in the temple. This curtain in the temple is referring to the one that is before the Holy of Holies. The temple has two curtains, one at outer court, one at the one separating the holy place from the holiest of all. And it's the second one. And he said that this curtain, now at which point we don't know which he was referring to, but it could be, I would just say, he could be likely in front of the second veil. Or it could be the outer veil. We can't tell. He said there is a huge ornate tapestry, like it's a tapestry, a curtain, it's a curtain, a drawing with pictures on it. And according to Josephus, they put in on this tapestry a panorama of heaven. So it's a painting of heaven, you can see. And when the last breath where Jesus breathed on the cross, this painting with heaven painting on it was torn into two. So you can see the similarity between Isaiah and this crucifixion part. The temple, on the veil there, or in front of the veil there, was this panorama of heaven. And you can say that it's no coincidence, isn't it? It's trying to tell you that this is how God is answering Isaiah's prayer. And you must also know a very significant thing when this veil was torn into two. One is miraculous or extraordinary, and even peculiar, strange, because not what should I say, not everyday kind of happening, right? Where a veil nobody can touch on is torn from top to bottom. And commentators will always like to point out to us, top to bottom means somebody from heaven tore it open. It's not from bottom to top, because that will be done by men, but from top to bottom is definitely an action of God. And in the Roman and the Greco-Roman culture, they understand in a superstitious way that certain miraculous things of this kind is like a bad omen, or not a bad omen, just an omen. Omen means a sign. In that sense, it's a superstitious sign. By superstition, they understand a message like that. That when a king dies, before or after the death of that king, or usually before, that event will tell you that something bad has happened to the king. They know from their own culture and history. For example, this third emperor of the Roman Empire, Caligula, he ruled from AD 37 to AD 41. Before he died, the statue of Jupiter at Olympia laughed aloud. How can statues laugh? So when they heard the laughter of this statue, they know something bad will happen to the king. It's almost like they say the gods are not happy with this king. I send a sign first to tell him I'm going to change. Chinese people will have no problem with that. Every time there is something big and bad that has happened, they will know that there will be a change in the emperor. There was a huge earthquake in 1976, somewhere July. A huge earthquake hit the eastern side of China. The whole city was demolished. Over 200,000 people died. Within 6 weeks, Mao Zedong passed away in Beijing. So they understand this concept of when something bad happened like that. And to have your sacred veil torn in two, that's no good now. So in a way, Mark, the gospel writer, played with leverage on the culture to tell them this is the death of a king. That the man who died on the cross there and the temple's veil being torn is connected. He is a king in the end. You must recognize that what he's trying to say here. And by that veil torn in two is also something that the Jewish people are very familiar. The veil, in some sense, blocked God away from men. That is the basic understanding. God is so holy, we cannot approach him. But you must know that the New Testament, don't read it that way. Right? Rather, the New Testament shows us that the veil was open so that man can come to God or God can come to man. That we may have heaven on earth here. So, Old Testament philosophy or idea is, don't come. You come, you die. New Testament is, come. If you don't come, you die. You cannot say any plainer, because the whole message of New Testament is that we come to God. The Old Testament says, stay away. You come near, you die. So this changes the rules. When the veil was torn, we see that. That's why we read with joy when you see Hebrews 10:20. Can we have that verse up? By the new and living way that he opened opened for us through the curtain, that is his flesh. Now, a lot of people say, why his flesh has suddenly become a curtain? In a certain sense, Jesus was God incarnate, God coming in the form of flesh. And that flesh hides as a curtain in that sense, so that man cannot see God. And so by dying on the cross, not only did the curtain in the temple was torn into two, when they broke his back, when they whipped him, when they tortured him, his flesh was really torn. Yeah? Not torn into two, but torn. And in that sense, it is through this tearing of his flesh at the cross, or at the whipping before he went to the cross. And since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. So he tells us, now, come confidently with full assurance in your heart. God will receive you. God will not reject you. He has opened that veil. See, this is how Mark is trying to say the answer to Isaiah's prayer lies in this curtain being opened so that we all can come to God confidently. I told you that Mark is trying to link the baptism and the crucifixion with words. The first word is torn, that side torn as well. Then the second word is spirit. So when he came out of the waters, Jesus saw the Spirit coming down on him like a dove. The Spirit came upon him. But what you cannot see in the crucifixion, the word, you can't see the word Spirit. It's because of the way we must understand something about interpretation of translations. Spirit is always pneuma. So if you have, and pneuma can be translated as spirit or air or breath. You know that, huh? When you have pneumonia, you know what? It's got something to do with your lungs and your breath. I use pneumatic tires. It's filled with air, okay? And breath as well. So it can be spirit, it can be breath, and it can be air. Depends on the context. That word is found in verse 37. A form of the word pneuma. He breathed his last. He put out his last breath there, and he died on the cross. So when he was baptized, the spirit, the breath came on him. When he died, now it's not that the Spirit went back to the Father. The Spirit, when he breathed out his last, the Bible would use that word, breathe out. It was a breathing out to the whole world. That the Spirit is given now to the whole world, not just remaining in him. That's why it correlates with that verse in John's Gospel 21, where after his resurrection, he was resurrected and he breathed upon them the Spirit. So that is the connection there. But it only gets fulfilled only in Acts chapter 2 verse 4. Acts chapter 2 on Pentecost Day. So this idea is not saying that he breathed out his last and the Spirit went back to the Father. But it's so that the Spirit will be released to you and me now. That is the thing that is happening here. Then, of course, the words there, this, you are my beloved Son, with you I'm well pleased. You are my beloved Son is found in the baptism story. That's said by God in baptism. But at the crucifixion, it was not God who said it. It was left to a centurion to say it. He said, truly, truly, this man was the Son of God. At baptism, the Father spoke, and he said he was very well pleased. But at the cross, Jesus, when he was crucified, the Father also don't want to look at him. And he was forsaken. Earlier on, he shouted, my God, why have you forsaken me? So if God has forsaken him, can he now say, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased with? He cannot say like that. So he left it to a Gentile centurion to say it for him. This is indeed truly the Son of God. Again, the message is, he's trying to say to you, in the way how he answered Isaiah is to present to you the Son of God. There's no other answer for Isaiah's prayer except to send the Son and die. This is my beloved Son. That's my answer to Isaiah's prayer, that you and I may have salvation. And the first presentation of the Son, you can say, was all glorious. But here, it was shame, suffering, and death in the end. This is your Jesus. This is God's Son presented to you in this twofold way, so that you may not be mistaken that in the midst of all this presentation, there's also pain and suffering as well. So that when you go through pain and suffering, or very uncomfortable and very unpleasant times now, you realize that the Son has been there as well. This is the Son that he wants us to know. A Son of suffering as well. He had to keep his mouth shut. He cannot say anything to him, because there's one way of forsaking your Son. Do you understand? So he left it, of all people, a Gentile, to tell you that now this is not a Jewish God. This is a universal Savior. This is a God for all mankind. That a Gentile would representatively speak on every one of us here in this room and all over the world. That this truly of truth, Amen, is the Son of God. He is putting all this up to help you understand how he himself is trying to answer this question. And today when we hear it, this Gentile centurion is speaking for all of us. This is truly God's Son. It's not enough for God to say, this is my Son. In the end, he wants you to say with him. I have always marveled by, sometimes how God never speaks to you, but he's speaking to you. All we need to do is to overhear what the Father and the Son say is enough to hear a lot of things for your life already. Do you know that Isaiah was never called by God? Who shall go for us? It's a three-party talk. Father, Son, and the Spirit, they're talking among themselves. Who will go for us, and whom shall we send? He's not talking to Isaiah, it's us. Isaiah benefited it just by near enough and heard it. And here I am, he answered it. So some of you want to know whether you're called to whatever God called you to do. Sometimes you don't hear, you overhear only what God is saying. That should be good enough. The way until you hear everything, God, I don't know whether it's possible for God to speak everywhere and every time that we want him to speak. If we could get close enough, where the Father and the Son talking together amongst themselves is enough to go. And hearing these words, this is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased with. Who is he talking to? He's not talking to the bystanders at River Jordan. He's not talking to John the Baptist. He totally ignored all that. He's just talking to his son. So Mark is presenting to us that that is also your way of hearing it. And that's where we all come to realize that spiritual truth has this, how we call it, multiple impact on everybody. Jesus is God's Son. And that is the wonderful news that Mark is trying to say. God wants us to know that this Son is loved by God. And love can also include some measure of suffering. These three things of this Son is in this word. This is my beloved Son. First of all, Son of God would have to mean that He is divine. He's God. Secondly, He's loved by God. That is what He is saying. This is my beloved Son. And the word beloved does not mean just love. When you love something, how shall I say, especially father loving children, that to the father is the only one only. You get the picture? Abraham got 2 sons. He loved both of them. But when the angel or God asked him to go to Mount Moriah to sacrifice, the angel will say, your only son. He got 2 sons, what? Ishmael and Isaac. But when you love, so God loving this Jesus is His beloved. I'm not saying God got many, many children now, but the idea is that it becomes so special, it's singular to Him now. It's so precious to Him that it's like one only, the only one. So not only is Jesus divine, the Son of God is divine, not only is Jesus loved by God, but He is the only special one. So these 3 words connect these 2 stories. The word thorn, and then the word breath, and the word Son of God. Now we jump to the middle story, the Transfiguration. Let me read from Mark's Gospel, chapter 9, verse 2 to 8. And after 6 days, Jesus took with Him Peter, James, and John, and led them up at the high mountain by themselves. And He was transfigured before them. And His clothes became radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For he did not know what to say, for they were terrified. And a cloud overshadowed them. And a voice came out of the cloud. This is my beloved Son. Listen to Him. And suddenly looking around, they no longer saw anyone with them, but Jesus only. The story cannot just jump into this passage just like that. You have to go backwards. The way the gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, write their gospel stories, they divide their stories into 2 parts. Right at the middle, the first part is all about miracles, teachings, and healing the sick and deliverance and so on. That is the first part. The second part is when He starts to announce 2 things. One, that He is the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. He's not an ordinary person. For you can understand that through the story, the way Matthew presented the gospel. At Mark 16, when he asked that question, which is also in Matthew 16 and also in Mark's story, where he will ask this question, who do you think I am? And they will say, He is the Christ. the Son of the living God, and the Messiah, and so on. So with that is the dividing line. From then on, when people know him, he is divine, that he is not just an ordinary man, he's the Son of God. He is not just a healer, a teacher, or somebody who do good things. He's special. He will also say at the same time that the Son of Man will suffer, will be beaten up, will be rejected, and then he will die on the cross. In Mark's and Luke's gospel, I think all in he said that 3 times. Why 3 times? Sometimes it's very hard for the disciples to grasp this, that the Son of God can suffer and die. That is near impossible as far as they were concerned. This is something absurd. They cannot reject it. In fact, when he said it the first time, Peter, as usual, he wants to be the hero. He said, no, that should not be. And Jesus rebuked him because he was influenced by Satan. Get behind me, he said. That is how he always bring these 2 things together. When he announced that he is the Son of God, shortly after that, this phrase will come, that he will suffer and die at the hands of the chief priests and the Jewish leaders. So when that took place in this Mark's version, in chapter 8, verse 31 onwards. He said, the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. So that was the first time. And when he is now transfigured before them, 2 other characters appear with him, Moses and Elijah. There are tons of commentaries to tell us what each 2 of them represent. I won't go into all that, but I will give you a simplified version. Who are they? They're just prophets, okay? So they were prophets talking with him. And Luke is careful to say that the 3 of them were talking about the departure. That is a word called the Exodus. So the death of Jesus on the cross is like Moses leading the people out of the house of slavery, the house of Egypt, and bringing people across the Red Sea into the promised land. So that is the image that they understand. So when they were discussing about his departure, or some versions say the decease, Decease, or in some translation they will actually use the word in the real literal word exodus. It was an exodus. So this exodus is the main subject of their discussion or their talking. When Peter had enough sort of wakefulness, he said, Master, Rabbi, it is good that we are here. We can build you 3 tents. What is Peter trying to say? 2 prophets, you also prophet. 3 prophets, all of you are prophets. That's the idea he had. Peter regarded this man, after all these months with him, he is still seeing him as a prophet. So to shut him up, God sent a cloud, and then everybody, he can't see, so he keep quiet. So when the cloud was lifted up, they saw no one. The 2 prophets have departed and left Jesus only, which is to tell you, all the prophets will go away, my son will remain. And then God spoke, this is my beloved son. So this word son of God here connects to the baptism story and the crucifixion story. So this is my beloved son. But he added 3 more important words. Listen to him. And that is a very important part of it. Moses and Elijah are prophets, so they will all pass away. But Jesus is always more than a prophet. He is the Son of God. We find that prophets will go away. It was not in the Old Testament prophets, rather, was not intended to be everlasting or eternal. Let me read to you Hebrews 1 verse 1 and 2. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is the opening lines of the book of Hebrews. Verse 1, long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days, He has spoken to us by His Son. That's why He said, this is my beloved Son. Listen to Him. There are a number of comparisons that we are seeing between the Son of God and the prophets, or the prophets and the Son of God. The prophets, they spoke for a time called long ago. You are not interested to read the Straits Times newspaper on 2nd of July 1954, right? You don't want to, if I give you that newspaper, you don't even want to look at. So you must understand what he's saying. This newspaper is an old newspaper meant for that particular time. He said, but today, right, in these last days, this is like reading the newspaper of 25th October 2020. You're reading a newspaper. When you read the Old Testament, just remember it's an outdated piece of newspaper. Nobody will read a lot about it. But it's only good for the the archaeologists and the historians. But if you want current news, what's going to happen at 2 o'clock today at our palace in Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, you want to read today's news, okay? So this prophet, this Son of God is for today. In these last days, long ago, newspaper lah. Now, today, read the current newspaper with this person, Jesus, the Son. So it's to tell you they will all disappear. Right? But now you have the Son of God that will remain. And by many ways, and in many parts, you can paraphrase it to mean, to say, in bits and pieces. No prophet understood the whole plan of God. A little bit here, a little bit there. Every one of them did not get the full picture. All of them were having one or two pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, and they were all very great things, even though they are one or two pieces of jigsaw puzzle. But with the Son, it's a complete word. Right? There is no mistaken. He is the full counsel of God, the whole counsel of God. With Jesus, you understand the important things from start to finish. Then you go to agak-agak a bit. And sometimes you agak wrong. The last part is, right? As I say, they all are prophets. But this is the Son of God. That is, as a Son of God, now the Father is saying, listen to Him, listen to the Son. To say it more bluntly, after Jesus, God has nothing to say already. Everything He wants to say, He said it through His Son. So that is why He said with so much urgency and fullness in His heart, listen to Him. You can't get any better than that. If you miss Him, you have missed everything because you got nothing else to say already. I just wonder whether it is possible for any human to say everything he wants to say. Not possible, right? You will never get such a situation where everything you want to say. That is why you have to come every week. You hear preachers who also, in a certain sense, dispensing to you the Word of God. But God's Word is in all totality in the Son. So you hear Him. He's saying, if you don't hear Him, you will be deaf to me all your life. He is God's complete Word. As far as what you want to know what God is saying, listen to Him. Because His word never changes. So when He rents heaven, He's introducing us His Son. He's introducing a Son on the cross with suffering. Then He's also introducing in the middle of it a Son that you must listen to Him. So He is sending to us, when He rents the heaven, now this is how I put it all together, how Mark is, the gospel writer Mark is saying, and this is what is relevant for us. When He tore the curtain of heaven and the curtain of the veil or the temple, He is putting before us a Son of love. That means, this is my beloved Son. This Son has been loved, and all He will say to us is love. Okay, what I'm saying? This is the Son of my love. Listen to Him. What else can you expect? A Son who will tell you love. Even in the midst of suffering, He still loves us. Isaiah 64 verse 4, which is 2 verses or 3 verses after Isaiah 64 verse 1. I'm sure you know how to count, right? But I'm trying to give you the context. He said, oh, that you will rend the heavens. Huh? That's what He said in verse 1. But verse 4, He then concludes what will happen if you rend the heavens. Verse 4 is up there. From of old, no one has heard. No. I'm looking at Isaiah 64 verse 4. From of old, no one has heard or perceived by the ear. No eye has seen a God besides you, who acts for those who wait for Him. Again, in a certain sense, He said, this is what happened when you rend the heaven, break open the curtain, and come down and be with us. Not in flaming fires, because Jesus never came in flaming fire. But the net effect or result is that if we keep waiting on you, you act on our behalf. You will act for those who wait on you. Okay? Now that word wait there is like the word wait in Isaiah 40, they that wait upon the Lord. It has the idea of being in some kind of way entwined with God. But Paul, the New Testament writer that interprets our gospel doctrines, he said in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 9. 1 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 9, it says like this. 1 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 9, it says like this. But as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor human heart conceived, what God has prepared for those who love Him. Isaiah said, for those who wait on Him. Here, Paul reinterpret an Old Testament truth and said, for those who love Him. So it is a love talk we are saying here. Old Testament, you wait on Him, He'll do wondrous things for you. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard. For those who wait. But Paul like to polish up the language a bit and say, for those who love God. And this is possible now. We can love God. And He has prepared for us things that our heart and mind, ear or eye can never imagine at all. Sometimes you got to pause for a while, take a deep breath and be in wonder what this could be, isn't it? Your eye has not seen. Everything you have seen is not what God is going to give to you. Everything you have heard, even about heaven, how much people gone to heaven and describe to you what heaven, it is even more than that. It is not what they have said, it's even more than what they say. On and on you will go. It will just leave you speechless, isn't it? That you have a God, and all it inspires you to do is to love Him even more. And that is the thrill about Christianity. eye has not seen, ear has not heard. The kind of language is just stupendous, we say. Out of this world. When we love him. Because now he's saying the way is open, we can love him. So, this is the net result. He tore open the curtain. And we go to God. And to find that he's a God of love. And that leaves us with that conclusion that the Hebrew writer tried to say, come boldly, confidently, in a new and living way that he has opened for us through the curtain that is his flesh, with our hearts sprinkled with the pure water. Would we all heed that? Because I think we don't have real answers. Before we enjoy a short season of peace, sometimes another issue crop up and so on. So how can you live like that? There must be something more stabilizing. There must be something more secure for each one of us. Put our faith in this open door, this open curtain that's given to each of us. The psalmist say like this, the help of man is vain. I think what life teaches each of us is that whatever human machinery and clever ideas, cannot fully rely on. And there are times, I'm not trying to excuse myself in a pandemic and MCO like this. We cannot even access you to give pastoral help. The best of pastoral care is also man's effort. Sometimes it works, it reaches, it helps, it blesses. But sometimes the best intention also cannot reach to you. I'm not trying to run away from our job. I'm just being realistic. And at the end of it, each one of us have to take that step and go in, come boldly. He loves you. He loves you very dearly. And let us embrace him. Our God in heaven, we thank you, you present to us your Son. How dare we slight him or even do him harm. Make our heart tender as we have prayed and embrace him fully. God, be among us so that we may be a rock in these times, that we can help people. May you cover each one of us with your love more and more. Plumb the depths of our spirit with the love of God. We commit each one of us, commit all those at home into your protection, Lord. We ask all this in Jesus' name. God bless you. We go through that particular door.